Welcome to the Diaries of Science Fiction, where extraordinary stories come to life. Enjoy the journey. The hall was quiet in the particular way only powerful places manage, a silence thick enough to feel regulated. I stood on the circular floor at its center, trying not to shift my weight too much, because every movement echoed and I was already getting the sense that echoes were frowned upon here. Light moved slowly along the walls, not from torches or lamps but from veins of living material embedded in the structure itself, pulsing as if the building were calmly breathing. Somewhere behind me, a door sealed with a sound like a polite cough from a god. The herald cleared his throat. It sounded rehearsed. My name followed, translated into something that tried very hard to sound dignified and failed at the last syllable. That was when everything went wrong. The queen rose so abruptly that the throne reacted a fraction of a second too late, unfolding defensive geometries that immediately powered down again in confusion. Her eyes fixed on me, not with anger, not with triumph, but with recognition so sharp it felt like being pointed at by history itself. Her long ears, elegant and unmistakably alien despite how human the rest of her face seemed, lifted as if pulled by an invisible string. "He is here." The words slammed into the hall. A ripple of motion spread through the court. Guards stiffened, advisors leaned toward one another, and one particularly old alien near the back dropped a data slate with a clatter that sounded suspiciously like panic. I looked over my shoulder just to be sure there wasn't another human standing behind me with better posture and a cooler jacket. There was. I said, because centuries of diplomacy had not prepared me for this moment. "Hi." No one laughed. That felt unfair. Whispers moved faster than sound, carried by subdermal communicators and eye flickers. I caught fragments archived, forbidden, probability fracture, none of which I remembered applying for. The queen stepped forward, slowly now, as if gravity had renegotiated its terms. Beside her stood a woman who might have passed for human if not for her long ears and the faint shimmer beneath her skin, like starlight trapped under ice. She watched me with open curiosity, head slightly tilted, as though I were a puzzle that had already failed to follow the picture on the box. "This is impossible," someone muttered. Someone else replied, "That's what they said last time." I raised a hand, then lowered it again when several weapons adjusted themselves in response. "Just to clarify," I said, aiming for helpful, "is this the part where I kneel, run, or apologize for something I haven't done yet?" The woman with the long ears made a sound very close to a laugh before she stopped herself. The queen did not smile. She looked at me the way one looks at a storm forming on the horizon, familiar enough to be feared, unpredictable enough to be remembered. "Summon the inner archives," the queen said quietly. "Seal the exits." The hall obeyed. I exhaled and muttered to myself, I knew I should have stayed on the ship. Somewhere deep in the Empire's memory, my name was waking up. They did not move me right away, which somehow made everything worse. The exits sealed with a sound like a satisfied decision, and the court rearranged itself around that fact, as if this sort of thing happened every other Tuesday. The queen stared at me long enough that I began to wonder whether blinking was considered disrespectful. I tried once. No one died. Encouraged, I tried again. "Inner archives are responding," an unseen voice announced, layered and harmonic like three people sharing one throat. "Warning, content classified beyond imperial consent." "That's comforting," I said. "Nothing says hospitality like secrets that don't want to be remembered." The woman with the long ears finally stepped closer. Her gaze was sharp but not hostile, the way a scientist looks at a specimen that might bite. "You don't appear dangerous," she said. "Story of my life," I replied. "I specialize in looking disappointing." A few courtiers shifted uncomfortably. Humor, apparently, had not been cleared by protocol. The woman's lips twitched anyway. Her ears angled back for just a second, betraying something like amusement before discipline reclaimed her. The queen descended the final step of the dais. Each footfall triggered faint geometric ripples in the floor, security systems waking, and then thinking better of it. Names carry weight, she said. Yours carries aftermath. I assure you, I said, any aftermath I've caused was purely accidental. That, she replied, is the problem. The archives awakened then. The air thickened, not visually, but conceptually, like the room had agreed to remember too much at once. Fragments bled into awareness, star systems blinking out of expected futures, treaties dissolving after casual conversations, wars ending because someone made the wrong joke at the wrong time. My name echoed through it all, never centered, never leading, always present like an annotation the universe forgot to delete. I rubbed the back of my neck. I feel like I should be charging consulting fees. One of the generals snapped, "This is not amusing." "I know," I said gently. "That's why I'm trying to help." The woman with the long ears circled me once, slow and deliberate. I noticed she stayed just outside arm's reach, which felt wise. "You don't know why you're here," she said. "I barely know where here is," I answered. "Your gravity's a little judgmental, by the way." That earned a soft sound from her again, definitely a laugh this time, quickly hidden behind a cough. The Queen watched the exchange closely, as if measuring variables that refused to stay still. "Centuries ago," the Queen said, "a human disrupted our probability engine simply by being present." I brightened. "See, that sounds impressive." "It was catastrophic," she said flatly. "Oh," I said, "less impressive then." Silence fell again, but it had changed. It wasn't ceremonial now. It was curious. The Empire had expected a weapon, or a demon, or a prophecy made flesh. Instead, it had me, standing in the middle of its most sacred hall, cracking jokes while ancient systems whispered my name like a warning they still didn't understand. The woman stopped in front of me. "If you are what the archives claim," she said, "nothing about you should make sense." I smiled a little helplessly. "Welcome to being human." They escorted me out of the throne hall with an efficiency that suggested long practice in handling things that did not fit the script. No one touched me, but the air itself seemed politely insistent, guiding my steps through corridors that shifted just slightly ahead of us, as if the palace preferred to stay one move smarter than its occupants. The woman with the long ears walked at my side, close enough that I could feel a faint warmth from her skin, distant enough to remind me this was not a friendly stroll. "You haven't asked my name," she said after a while. "I figured I'd wait until I knew whether you were planning to interrogate me or vaporize me," I replied. "It's rude to mislabel someone during an execution." She exhaled sharply through her nose. "You joke under pressure." "I panic silently," I said. "Joking is how I leak." That earned me another almost smile. She gestured, and a door unfolded into existence, revealing a chamber that hummed with restrained energy. The floor recognized her and softened its glow. The walls adjusted, listening. "This is a truth room," she said. "It discourages lies." "Great," I said. "Does it also discourage bad decisions? Because I've got a long history with those." She paused, then shook her head. "No." "Then we're both doomed." The door sealed behind us. I felt a gentle pressure behind my eyes, not painful, just attentive, like the room had leaned in. She remained standing while I was encouraged very firmly to sit. I complied, resisting furniture that thinks is never wise. "The archives indicate that wherever you went," she said, "statistical models failed, outcomes diverged. Cause and effect behaved creatively." "I once broke a coffee machine by complimenting it," I said, "if that helps." "It does not," she replied, then hesitated. "But it is consistent." She activated a projection between us. Images flickered, star maps, timelines branching like nervous systems, probability curves collapsing into scribbles. Each time my name appeared, the projection stuttered as if embarrassed. "You're not a conqueror," she said slowly. "You don't command fleets. You don't even seem particularly ambitious." "I wanted a quiet job in a window," I said. "The universe had other plans." Her long ears dipped, thoughtful. That may be the most alarming statement yet. A new voice threaded into the room, the Queen's, filtered through layers of security and reluctance. Have you ever been near a quantum stabilizer? I dated someone who stabilized crystals, I said. Emotionally, not scientifically. Silence stretched. I imagined entire committees regretting this line of questioning. The point, the Queen said carefully, is that humans introduce variance. You specifically introduce narrative collapse. I'd apologize, I said, but I don't know how to stop being me. The woman studied me, no longer like a puzzle but like a phenomenon. Then perhaps, she said, the question is not how to stop you but where to place you. I leaned back, the chair adjusting to my weight and apparent incompetence. As long as where comes with food and fewer alarms, I'm flexible. Somewhere deep in the palace, ancient systems recalibrated, uncertain whether to prepare for disaster or punchline. I had a feeling the Empire would soon learn the difference didn't matter. They decided, after much silent communication and at least one dramatic pause that felt unnecessary, that I would be temporarily assigned a guardian. This was phrased as an honor. The guardian was the long-eared woman who accepted the role with the visible enthusiasm of someone being handed extra paperwork at the end of a shift. "I am not your babysitter," she informed me as we walked. "That's a shame," I said. "I respond well to snacks and encouragement." She did not slow her pace. "You respond well to causing structural anomalies." "Unintentional ones," I corrected. "I have principles." The palace corridors reacted to her presence, opening before us, sealing behind, adjusting gravity by small, disapproving degrees. Somewhere above, something vast moved, the sound too large to be mechanical. I resisted the urge to look impressed. In places like this, looking impressed seemed like an invitation. "You will remain within designated zones," she said. "You will not touch anything without permission." "I won't even look at things aggressively," I promised. She glanced at me. "Your definition of aggressively concerns me." We reached a balcony that overlooked a vast interior space, where suspended platforms drifted like patient thoughts. Alien scholars moved between them, trailing data like faint ghosts. The moment I stepped forward, several of them stopped and stared. "Oh good," I murmured. "I've achieved celebrity." "They are measuring probability disturbances," she said. "You're spiking their instruments." "I do that to elevators too." Her ears flicked, an involuntary tell I was beginning to recognize. "You find this amusing." "I find panic exhausting," I said. "Laughing uses less energy." She considered that, then gestured for me to follow her onto a floating platform. It dipped slightly under my weight, then corrected itself, offended. As it carried us forward, the palace shifted around us, rearranging paths that did not want to exist yet. "You know," I said, "back home, when someone reacts like the Queen did, it usually means I forgot an anniversary." "The Queen does not forget," she said. "She remembers too much." That explains the stress. For a while we traveled in silence, broken only when the platform lurched briefly to the left, then steadied. She frowned at the control glyphs. "That wasn't me," I said quickly. "I didn't accuse you." "You were thinking it." She sighed. "You are not what I expected." "Neither is most of my life," I said, "but here we are." She stopped the platform abruptly and turned to face me. Up close, her features were strikingly human, softened by something unfamiliar, ancient. Her long ears angled forward, attentive. "If the Empire changes because of you," she said quietly, "it will not be because you intended it." I met her gaze. That's usually how the biggest mistakes happen. A corner of her mouth lifted, despite herself. "Then I suppose," she said, restarting the platform, "we will have to make sure the mistake survives." Ahead of us, systems recalculated, futures shifted, and somewhere deep in imperial space, alarms hesitated, unsure whether to sound or wait for the punchline. By the fifth cycle of my supervised freedom, the palace had developed a personality toward me. Doors opened a little slower. Floors hesitated before committing to my footsteps. Once, a wall politely asked me to reconsider my trajectory. I was beginning to feel like an unsanctioned variable with legs. My guardian, whose name I had learned was Sae'len, after accidentally addressing her as Pointy, walked beside me with the weary focus of someone escorting a natural disaster that refused to look impressive. Her long ears twitched every time the ambient probability field fluttered, which was often. "You are doing it again," she said. "I'm walking," I replied, menacingly perhaps, but still walking. Ahead of us, a group of imperial analysts huddled around a floating lattice of equations. The moment I drew close, the lattice shuddered and rearranged itself into something that looked suspiciously like a shrug. One analyst groaned. "The models won't stabilize." I leaned in. "Have you tried turning the universe off and on again?" Sae'len closed her eyes. "Do not encourage him." The analysts retreated as if I were contagious. I watched them go. "You know," I said, "where I come from, this is how people act when someone microwaves fish." She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. "We are not afraid of you," she said. "We are afraid of the pattern that follows you." "That sounds worse," I admitted. We entered a chamber reserved for historical review. The air hummed differently here, thick with preserved decisions. Sae'len activated a sequence, and the space filled with echoes of moments long past, meetings, battles, negotiations that had ended not in victory, but in confusion. "There," she said, pointing to a moment where a war council dissolved into argument after a human advisor asked a question no one could answer. "And there." Another echo. "A treaty abandoned because a human delegate laughed at the wrong time." "And there." "That one," I said, squinting, "was definitely my fault." She looked at me sharply. "You remember." "Not the details," I said, "just the feeling. Like the universe was a stack of plates, and someone bumped the table." Her ears lowered. "You do not break things," she said slowly. "You loosen them." "That's unsettlingly accurate." An alert pulsed through the chamber. Sae'len's wrist glyph flared. "The council is divided," she said. "Some want you erased from the equation. And the others? Some want to keep you close," she said, "to see what happens." I smiled weakly. "I hate both options." For the first time, she smiled fully. "So do we." As we left the chamber, the palace adjusted again. Pathways rerouting, futures recalculating. Somewhere far above, the empire continued to function, tense but intact. And at its center, I walked on, not as a weapon or a prophecy, but as something far more dangerous. An unresolved question with a sense of humor. The council chamber did not want me inside. I could tell because the doorway narrowed just a fraction too late, clipping my shoulder with a static reprimand. Sae'len paused, glanced at the wall, then at me. "It's adjusting to your probability profile," she said. "I'd like to file a complaint," I muttered. "I bruise easily in hostile architectures." Inside, the council was already arguing. Not loudly, this was an advanced civilization, but intensely, with layered speech, overlapping thought streams, and the occasional holographic spike of outrage. The queen sat at the center, still as a fixed star, watching everything orbit her. The moment I stepped forward, several projections flickered. One simply gave up and turned itself off. A counselor pointed at me. "He destabilizes decision matrices merely by proximity." "I've been told I have that effect on group chats," I said. Sae'len made a sound that might have been a warning cough or suppressed laughter. I was choosing to believe the second. "We cannot execute him," another counselor said. "Every simulation where we attempt removal results in cascading uncertainty." "Erase a variable," I said, "and you don't get control, you get weird." The room went quiet. Slowly, very slowly, the queen turned her gaze toward me. "You speak as though you understand this," she said. "I don't," I replied honestly. "But I've lived inside it. Humans don't resolve tension well. We poke it, sometimes gently, sometimes with a stick." Several counselors exchanged looks. Data streamed. Futures branched, then tangled. An alarm chimed softly, too softly. "What was that?" I asked. Sae'len checked her wrist glyph. "Minor containment fluctuation." The floor dipped. I grabbed the nearest surface, which happened to be a council table older than several stars. The room lurched, then froze mid-shift. Holograms stalled. Sound bent. "I swear," I said quickly, "I did not mean to touch destiny." The Queen stood, not in panic this time, but with a kind of resigned clarity. "Enough," she said. "All of you are attempting to solve him as a problem. And he is not." A counselor challenged. She looked at me. I shrugged. "I'm more of a situation." A breath of something like amusement passed through the chamber. Even the systems seemed to ease, recalibrating around that admission. "We will not kill him," the Queen said, "and we will not worship him." "That's a relief," I said. "I'm bad with rituals." "We will observe," she continued, "and we will adapt." Sae'len stepped closer to my side. "That means you stay," she said quietly. I nodded. I was getting attached to the judgmental floors anyway. The chamber stabilized. Futures settled, not neatly but honestly. As we exited, Sae'len glanced at me, her long ears angled in thoughtful alignment. "You nearly broke the council," she said. "I prefer to think I loosened it," I replied. This time, she laughed without trying to hide it. "They stopped calling me a variable. It wasn't official. No announcement echoed through the palace. No decree etched itself into the living walls. But I noticed it in the small things. Doors no longer hesitated before opening. Floors committed to my footsteps without commentary. Even the probability monitors settled into a low, steady hum, like they had finally accepted that this was just how reality felt now. Sae'len noticed too. She walked beside me through the upper ring of the palace, her long ears relaxed instead of alert. "The systems have adapted to you," she said. "I've been trying that approach for years," I replied. "Nice to see someone finally succeed." The Queen summoned us at the end of the cycle. This time, no alarms accompanied the request, no sealed exits. When I entered the chamber, the air felt balanced, like a held breath finally released. "You will leave," the Queen said without preamble. I blinked. "I thought we were bonding." "You will return," she added, "but not as an unknown quantity." That was new. I waited. "We have reviewed the archives," she continued. "Your name no longer appears as a warning. It appears as a marker, a point of change." "That sounds flattering," I said carefully, "and mildly terrifying." She inclined her head. "Growth often is." Sae'len stepped forward. "The Empire will no longer attempt to control outcomes by force alone," she said. "We will allow uncertainty. We will allow humans." I smiled. Bold strategy. The Queen's eyes softened, just a fraction. "You taught us that stability without flexibility becomes fragility." I hadn't meant to. That was the strange part. Somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't apologizing for existing anymore. I wasn't trying to minimize myself to fit into systems that feared disruption. I was standing upright, letting the universe wobble if it needed to. At the hangar, Sae'len stopped me before I boarded my ship. "You changed," she said. "So did you," I replied. "You laugh now." She did quietly. "Do not be late when you return." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. "The floors would be offended." As my ship lifted away, the palace didn't flinch. No alarms. No